All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us on this LinkedIn Live session, all about how floppy disks are a great option for backup and recovery. A kid. This is all about hybrid cloud and AWS today. Looks like David got the memo, but I didn't. So right before the call started, found a great little AWS sticker. It's going right here. So we're branded and ready to go.
Looking good, Sam.
Cheers, mate. It's not as good as yours, but it's close enough. It'll do. So really appreciate everyone joining today. We're very much excited to really just have a conversation with everyone around, how AWS fits into the hybrid cloud scenario and what that means when it comes to backup. A couple of introductions before we get started. My name's Sam Nicholls. I'm the principal of product marketing here at Veeam, responsible for our public cloud solutions. So go figure, AWS today. And I am joined by my colleague, compatriot, friend, partner in crime. Don't know how else to describe you, David. A few welcome words for you today.
Work, yeah.
Yeah, so, that works as well.
Yeah, I'm David Hill, global technologist in Veeam's product strategy group. I work very closely with Sam, focusing on a lot of the cloud native technologies. So all the public clouds like AWS, Azure, so on, and also a lot of the like Kubernetes and cloud native workloads, and work essentially in the office of the CTO under Danny Allen, and spend a lot of my time talking about AWS with Sam.
Yeah, except you get the fancier title, David. So before we get going, David and I, if you've been on a presentation or LinkedIn Live with us, we just try to keep things as conversational as possible. We don't really come in with a huge plan. And a big part of that is really just hearing from you guys, the audience, wanting to hear your questions, your comments, your requests. So please post that and we'll keep an eye out on another screen and make sure that we get to those throughout this. We also like to see where everyone is dialing in from. So myself, I'm actually in Wisconsin, but just outside of Minneapolis, which is a big media focus right now around the world. And how about you, David?
Yeah, as you can tell by my accent, I'm born and bred in Texas. So loving life in Texas. And yeah, obviously a bit like Sam, we've migrated across the world, and I'm out in Austin in Texas now.
Awesome. And then it looks like we got Georgia on the map there. That is our ever reliable video guy, Mark, who makes sure that we bring these presentations to you week in, week out without fault, we hope. So thanks, Mark. So let's get started. The purpose of the conversation today is all around, hybrid cloud. And, we've been talking about hybrid cloud for many years now, but it really seems as though, over the last couple of years, especially the last year and a half since COVID, hybrid cloud has really kind of mashed the pedal to the floor, and it's going full speed. So, David, why do you think that hybrid is so, I guess, like beneficial and so attractive to folks nowadays?
Yeah, well, if you think about like just what's happened over the past year or so, like COVID's a great example of why like hybrid cloud and cloud in general has just exploded. And essentially, if you think back to like 2019, things were on like certain trajectories, and pace of like moving to the cloud or using the cloud was just kind of on a steady increase. But then when COVID hit and all these different countries around the world went into lockdown, people discovered that they were no longer allowed to go into the data center to go and repair any hardware faults. Maybe hard drives failed or switches failed, or like new servers needed deploying or installing. And certainly from that perspective, the cloud became a very easy way to get services up and running and deliver services in the middle of a pandemic. It's very simple, very easy to just log in, put your credit card in, and off you go. But of course, there was still all this on-premises infrastructure owned by the businesses that they aren't just going to say, oh, well, we're in the middle of a pandemic, we'll just shut that down. So the whole hybrid cloud model came in to help bridge the gap between businesses having to leverage the cloud for the specific reasons I just mentioned, and having their existing services running in their on-premises data centers. So trying to bridge that gap and essentially bring the two environments together much like you would bring two data centers together. And purely the growth over the past year or so has been driven due to the whole COVID pandemic that we've been seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I say we go into this conversation without preparation, but knowing we were going to talk about hybrid cloud, I did bring a slide to show, and it's from our latest data protection report 2021, which kind of really paints the reality of the hybrid cloud world that we live in right now. And I just want to walk through this a little bit and talk about what some of these bars mean. So, you've got the first cluster on the left is physical servers in the data center. In the middle, we've got virtual machines on hosts within the data center. And now on the right-hand side, we've got hosted virtual machines within a hyperscale public cloud provider like AWS or maybe even a regional service provider. And there's there's 4 bars on each one. And what we're trying to do is compare and contrast, what was happening in 2020 a year ago and what's happening in 2021 now, and what people think was going to happen in 2 years' time. So the dark green bar on the very left-hand side is kind of actuals pre-COVID, and that third bar, the lime green one, I guess, is kind of what people thought was going to happen in 2022. So no surprise, like physical machine adoption was on a decline. Virtual machines on premises was going to remain relatively static, and then we've got the hosted virtual machines in the public cloud, continuing to increase. And we asked that very same question when we were preparing this for 2021, and we can see that the actual shifts are happening much more aggressively and much more quickly than we thought have. And absolutely, that can be down to COVID and the reasons that David suggested. And then when we look at the teal colors, like what people think is going to happen by 2023. Again, like remaining relatively static for virtual machines, physical machines on a decline, and just that explosive growth in the cloud. So this really brings to light the hybrid nature of our data centers today. And I don't want people to think and take away from this that like virtual machine adoption on premises is declining. This is to demonstrate a mix, right? So actual virtual machine adoption on premises is still continuing to increase, right? We're still producing lots and lots of data. We're still producing lots and lots of services and applications. It's just that the cloud is becoming the de facto standard more so for those than what we might consider more traditional approaches like physical machines or virtualization. So, new applications, new services, the cloud is almost like the de facto standard for those, but we're also seeing like a lift and shift of some applications from on-premises to the cloud. So David, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and what kind of mobility and portability means? And I'm going to put myself on mute while the dark garbage truck goes by.
Yeah, I wonder what was going on with the squeaky brakes. So thought you were in a mobile home there, Sam. But yeah, what Sam's saying there about how like things are moving to the cloud and how the data center is not going away. Like I've been working with cloud technologies now for about 12 years. And back when I originally joined VMware and they were launching vCloud Director and service providers were building these public clouds when AWS was still classed as like this little tiny bookstore, imagine that 12 years ago. And everybody's been predicting that the data center is going to die. Now, I don't necessarily believe that. I always believe there's going to be a place for on-premises data centers and for some businesses to have their own data centers, whether it be latency requirements or certain requirements around compliance, financial regulations. Although the cloud can meet certain recommendations, certain businesses are just never going to trust it. And you can talk about how regulations and certifications will always be there, but if people aren't going to trust it, they're not going to move to it. But what's interesting is, as well, is when you think about a lot of startup businesses now, and just moving away from like infrastructure, but nobody is going to start a business now and think the first IT service that I need to stand up is an Exchange server. It's just not going to happen. The first thing you're going to do is go to something like Office 365 or Google Workspace and just sign up for your users and pay like $3, $5, whatever you want for those users. And it's the same with the IT infrastructure. Most people now, certainly startup businesses, go straight to the cloud. And then what happens is when their businesses grow, then they start looking at building out their own data centers. I think Netflix is a great example, Dropbox as well. These were startups that were born in the cloud that now have their own very large data centers after they grew to a certain kind of cost economics perspective. It just didn't make sense to be paying someone else. So while we look at this and we talk about how we're moving to the cloud, also think about how that data center is not going to change anytime soon. But from a whole mobility piece that you were talking about, that is a big thing now about being able to move workloads around. And whether we talk about just AWS in general and moving like the lift and shift workloads, where I've got these particular 3-tier web apps that I want to move to the cloud because they're easier to just spin up and consume certain load balancer services. What tends to happen now is you'll move them to a particular cloud. So you'll move to AWS, for example, and everything will work great. But then some other services will come along in a different public cloud. And you'll be like, well, actually, from a latency perspective, I want these workloads closer to them. So then from a mobility perspective, you can move your workloads very easily from one cloud to another. And that's something Veeam does very well, not just provide you the capabilities to back up and protect your workloads, but also just move them seamlessly across clouds and across platforms, whether it's from AWS back to even a physical server in the data center, or taking a physical server in that data center and moving it out to the cloud or to virtualization or whatever. And that whole mobility piece is based around just making data portable. So it doesn't really matter what your data is or where you're creating it or what platform it's on. Just having that mobility aspect of your data is critical now in this modern infrastructure world that we're living in, and certainly in this hybrid cloud and multi-cloud world that we find ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. And I like how we're just kind of naturally transitioning from hybrid cloud from a production perspective to looking at hybrid cloud from a data protection and data management perspective. So I really kind of want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit more in just a sec, but let's cut to the map and just see where some folks are joining from. Make sure we get and say hello to everyone. Yeah, man, we got a lot of people from around the globe today. So we've got, folks in South Africa, India, Bucharest, Romania, Boston, Massachusetts, UK, Colorado, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria, North Dakota, Kenya, Jordan, Toronto, Wisconsin. Hello, Wisconsin friends. Nicaragua, Raleigh, North Carolina, Chicago, UAE, Brazil. Man, lots of people. So
I'm impressed with your geography there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've got someone on the right-hand side spelling it out for me. I'm all right with the U.S. states. I had to pass that for my citizenship test. But all right, I've got some of the languages down as well. So hello, bonjour, bună. So all that fun stuff. So cool. Let's start talking about the role of backup in the hybrid cloud. And the way that I really look at this is through three different lenses. So firstly, we've got, our on-premises data center, mixture of physical and virtual machines, and really leveraging the cloud, let's say AWS, as a backup target, right? We all know that there's object storage in AWS across varying different tiers of hotness or coolness that, helps us, take advantage of that infinite capacity within the cloud, as well as, very, very low costs for things like archive. So I want to jump into that little piece right now and in using the cloud as a backup target for workloads that aren't in the cloud. And we've recently launched version 11, which brought with it a lot of new features when it comes to AWS. So David, why don't you walk us through some of that and kind of what that's going to mean for those joining us today?
Yeah, so certainly from like the Veeam backup and replication perspective, what Veeam's been working on is building this whole centralized data management platform. So everything that Veeam does is modular, if you want to look at it that way. So whether it's you have services in Office 365, or you have vSphere VMs, or you have physical workloads, or you have laptops that you want to protect, everything is modular. So you can just go and you can get a particular product to protect that infrastructure. So you can go like buy Veeam backup for Office 365. You can go use Windows agents to protect your laptops or your physical servers. You can use Veeam backup and replication to protect your vSphere VMs, or you can use Veeam backup for AWS to protect your AWS workloads, and so on and so on. But from a Veeam backup and replication perspective, when we're talking about this whole hybrid cloud and multi-cloud world, they all integrate into Veeam backup and replication. So if you think about how a traditional business will start and they're protecting their vSphere workloads, and then they'll move on and they'll start protecting workloads through agents. So those agents tie into Veeam backup and replication as well as the virtual workloads. Then they can use Veeam backup and replication to go and protect their workloads out in AWS. So while all these products are modular, they can all be centrally managed through Veeam backup and replication. And without kind of like releasing secret roadmap information, not every single product today integrates with Veeam backup and replication, but obviously from that centralized data management platform, we're obviously on that trajectory. So everything will just all be centrally managed. We always, certainly in the vendor space, talk about this utopia of this single pane of glass and how just console hopping is a big pain. But when you think about data management in general, not just protecting your data, but managing where that data is stored, whether it's on local backup repositories or whether it's out in object storage in AWS, or you've maybe got Azure Blob Storage, or you have all these different workloads. Having to go to all these individual products and remembering, oh, right, I'm protecting AWS, I need to go to this particular URL, or I'm protecting my vSphere workloads, or I need to go log into this particular server, becomes a big headache. So with Veeam Backup and Replication version 11, a lot of effort and time was put in to building out and growing on this centralized data management platform so that everybody can manage their backups, their data, everything through that one central location. And that then becomes the de facto platform for everything that you do from that data management perspective.
Firstly, I think you got to put a pound in the swear jar, because you said single pane of glass, and I think the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth is digital transformation, right? Just buzzword David. That's what I'm going to call you.
Buzzword bingo. Good for that. So
yeah, I think that you make a really good point in that we've got all of these different environments, physical, virtual, workloads in one cloud or in multiple clouds, and the way that you go about protecting these isn't the same. You can't just copy and paste it across all the same. We carved out the market for agentless backup of virtual machines when everyone else was using agents. Agents, can you absolutely use them? Yeah, sure. And you can use them in the cloud as well. Is it necessarily the best way to go about protecting it? Probably not. So we start to have all of these purpose-built solutions for our different environments. And like you say, that can ultimately render us with multiple products from multiple vendors, maybe even multiple products from the same vendor, to go out and manage and protect all of our data in these different environments. And that becomes a real headache. And that's when mistakes start happening, costs start rising. So Veeam's vision to really unify this under a common control plane. I'm not making the same mistake as you, David. To unify this under a common control plane makes the management of that a lot easier, but also the portability. And you were talking about portability earlier on, where data lives today might not necessarily mean that's where the data is going to live tomorrow. And I really like the non-prescriptive approach that Veeam takes when it comes to your data. Right, so we just want to provide those purpose-built tools for you to protect your data where it's at now. We want to provide you with the tools to help you move it to where your organization needs to move it for whatever reason, protect it when it lands in its new location, and whatever you guys want to do with that data in the future, continue to do that. So that's helped by that, I was about to say it, that one control plane, but it's also helped by things like the Veeam Universal License, right? So it's a non-descriptive license. It's not tied to individual products. It's a license that is going to move with that data. So, it might be licensing the piece that protects virtual machines today. And then as you move that to, let's say, AWS, It'll automatically be pulled into a policy, continue to be protected, and it will just go out and find that license and continue to reuse it. So, license don't become redundant, I guess, and you have to go and buy new products. And it's a good vision by Veeam, I think. And
if you look at the way that Veeam's always done everything that Veeam does is software based. So if you compare it to other certain vendors, who provide you with hardware appliances and stuff like that hardware appliances have their place. But when you think about what Veeam does, with everything being software based, I tend to like to go back in time and look at how we did things in the past, partly because my favorite movie is Back to the Future and I like jumping around. But if you think about how for us old people, maybe some people don't remember these, but remember like zip drives, how these were great. If you wanted to back stuff up from your NT desktop, you could stick a disk in a zip drive, copy stuff onto it, and it'd all be protected. And that's great. But now we're in 2021. How do you go and get your data off a zip drive? You may find one on eBay, but no guarantees it's going to work. So you're stuck with a physical device that you can't get your data off. Whereas if you compare what Veeam does to like WinZip back in the day, how you could just drop all your data into a zip file, keep it there on go drop it on a CD, go drop it on a hard drive, whatever. You can still open that zip file today, whether you're using Mac or Windows or whatever. And Veeam does it the same way. If you think about like the way that Veeam stores its data into what we call a VBK, a Veeam backup file, that VBK that you take today, you'll be able to open in 10 years. Veeam provide free tools. So even if you decide in 10 years down the road, well, I don't want to be a Veeam customer anymore, you can still use things like Community Edition to go and open those VBKs and restore that data. So from a compliance perspective, that you're able to go and not only protect your data today, but to recover it. And that all comes back to that whole data portability piece that I was talking about earlier and that you've mentioned as well, Sam, about how everything we do is built around portability and how everything that we develop is all software based. So the same code that we use to protect a laptop on a desktop is the same code that we use in a data center. It just scales dramatically more for those particular use cases. So that's kind of the big thing where we're at, I think, when you look at like certain comparisons and you talk about the Veeam Universal license, about how we don't really care what you're protecting, whether it's a physical workload or a cloud-based workload. You just buy one license and protect an instance of whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. We don't necessarily care what you're doing with your data. We just want you to protect it and protect it with the right tool set. And that's a nice little segue into, something that I would say is less known than, or Veeam is less known for than we are with VM backup, vSphere backup, and that is the backup of AWS itself, right? And we kind of discussed that, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. Nice, David. Yeah. So when it comes to protecting AWS, again, you could use agents, but I think a better approach to go with is native backup and recovery, right? So something that is purpose built for the cloud, something that leverages the native technologies of the cloud to help be, more cost effective, but also making sure that we adhere to, things like scalability and security models that, make the cloud what it is and why it's so attractive. So to me, native means kind of three things: native snapshots, native storage, and native security. So do you want to walk us through some of those, David, or I'm happy to?
So when you're looking at like protecting your workloads out in the public cloud, like you mentioned, like you can use agents and you can tie it in with certain services, but the big problem is agents don't know about the platform that you're running on. So from a cost perspective, the cost can spiral quite dramatically. When you're using a purpose-built tool for the public cloud, like Veeam Backup for AWS, it ties in with a lot of the AWS APIs. So you can use like EC2's EBS snapshots. You can leverage like the ability to move data within regions, so you're not paying data transfer costs. If you want to offload your snapshots from a particular region out to an object storage repository in the same region, you can integrate with things like AWS identity and access management, so IAM roles, to help build your security. Also things like cross-account backups as well. You know, one of AWS's best practices from a security perspective is to leverage multiple AWS accounts to build out these boundaries so that your data is safe and secure in the event that somebody actually gains access to a particular AWS account. If you're trying to use agents and then you're offloading that data, it's going to be stuck in the same regions or different repositories, and it can get quite complicated. By leveraging purpose-built tools that understand the platform, then being able to actually build not only data protection and data management solutions, but your whole cloud infrastructure to meet those best practices becomes a lot simpler. And that's certainly the approach that Veeam's taken when building these tools like Veeam Backup for AWS, to just integrate, meet all the requirements that the cloud providers expect you to implement when leveraging and delivering services, and just basically be able to hit all the compliance requirements that a business would expect from a data management solution.
You make two really interesting points. Like, we're kind of getting towards the bottom of the hour, so I want to start some parting remarks, I guess. But 2 points that you make that I find really interesting. Number one is around cost, right? You know, the cloud has the potential of being incredibly cost effective if you do it right, if you understand everything correctly. And I think a lot of folks make some pretty serious mistakes when they kind of go into the cloud and then they get a bill a month later and they're like, what? You know, I thought this was meant to be cost effective. To quote our CTO, you know, the cloud is not a charity. They build, you know, multiple tens of billions of dollars business based on this, you know, consumption of storage and compute and networking. But ultimately, I would say just be proactive and prepared and just understand. And Veeam can make that really easy for you guys. We have multiple kind of proactive planning tools in capacity planning tools in Veeam 1. So if you're looking at, you know, maybe leveraging Amazon S3 Glacier as part of our scale out backup repository to put backups in the cloud, we can help you with forecasting capacity there. As part of our AWS native offerings, we have things like our cost calculator. So that will, you know, take the information that David was giving you, the size, the frequency of snapshots, how often you want to, you know, offload that onto S3, if you want to move that across regions, and, you know, all the traffic and transaction costs, and proactively tell you exactly how much this policy is going to cost you each and every month. So firstly, there's no surprises at the end of the month. But also that means that you can, you know, align things like your service level objectives with your budgets that you've been given. And then the second point that you make is all around security, right? So I think anyone that's probably on this call that says security isn't top of their mind right now, you've got something special going on that you need to share with the rest of the world. But, you know, security attacks, ransomware attacks are on the rise. And I think it's of utmost importance that we always make sure that we have a proactive ransomware protection, but also reactive, so that if it gets in, we always have things like a clean backup to recover from. And that's partly by utilizing accounts as security boundaries, like David was saying. You know, backups are isolated from production. If production's compromised, you know, you're still going to have a clean backup to recover from. But then it's also leveraging things like Amazon's object lock capability, right? Making sure that backups are immutable. They are written once, they can be read many times, but they cannot be changed, even by ransomware. So again, just ensuring that you have that clean backup. David, any parting remarks from you or anything else that you want to talk about?
I'd just say anyone who's interested in protecting their AWS workloads and haven't looked at Veeam Backup for AWS, go to the AWS marketplace and there's like a free trial available, and you can go protect up, I think it's like up to 10 instances for free, and you can go leverage that, test it out, see how it integrates with Veeam Backup and replication, and just go have a play and see how it fits your use case and requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. All of our trials are free products, zero risk in terms of, y- having, being committed to purchasing something. So there's nothing like getting stuck in and getting your hands dirty and having to play around with the software. So fully encourage you to do all of that. All of the modular components of our platform, or the entire platform itself, again, has those free components, or at least a free trial. So by all means, have fun with it. So we'll start to bring this to a close. Let's take a look at the map at all the people that we're saying goodbye to.
Whoa, look at that.
Yeah, man, we're painting this whole thing green. Looks like we're saying goodbye to some folks in Russia, Da Svidaniya, Pune, India, Greece, Turkey, Hong Kong, California, Puerto Rico, New York. Looks like Brazil's on there as well. So we've got a good audience today. We appreciate you all joining us. So there's a few assets that want to leave you with if you want to actually go and take a look at some of those. So we've got some demo videos that actually take you through the products, so you can actually see how they work before you go and play with the free trial. We've got this awesome new comic book script. So it takes like Veeam's entire AWS story and just puts it in this fun comic book that's really easy to understand. So whether you're looking to back up to the cloud, recover or migrate to AWS, or even protect AWS workloads or Kubernetes, it's all kind of put in this fun comic book, super easy to read, super fun, a little bit different from a white paper. And then just a plug for Dave Russell and Andre Zalescu's noon Eastern LinkedIn live slot next Monday, which is Veeam in the Cloud Unpacked. So nice little follow on to this. So if you want to get a little bit deeper into the Veeam technologies and everything that we do, not only with AWS, but the cloud as a whole, strongly encourage you to enjoy that. And then we've got VeeamON coming as well, May 25th and May 26th. So completely free online conference. Hopefully it's the last online one that we have to do, because we miss getting together with all of you guys. But, big focus on the cloud with Office 365, AWS, Azure, Google. We've got a lot of fun stuff with Kubernetes in there as well, with our recent Kasten acquisition, and then ransomware as well, how to make sure that your data is always secure, safe, and recoverable. So appreciate everyone joining today. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on a LinkedIn Live soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.